It's the MLB This Week podcast. This week, a lot of talk about Pete Rose, Josh Hamilton, and Jackie Robinson in space. You got to hear this episode. And it's time for another edition of the MLB This Week show. It's the MLB This Week podcast. My name is Rich Baxter.
And I'm Gary Mack.
And welcome aboard to another show of MLB This Week. And Gary, we've got a power-packed show lined up for our guest tonight.
Lots of good stories there, Rich, and I'm excited to hear some of yours. You got some good ones there, and a couple that I didn't even see.
Yeah, that's the beauty part about this show. We try to cover a lot of the stories that happened in the week of baseball, mainly around the U.S., but also around the world as well. And, of course, this past week, Pete Rose back in the news. I'm sure you've probably seen a few stories floating around about that, Gary, this week. But my Pete Rose story has three parts to it this week. And the first one is a lighthearted story that I found just doing some research. And that one is Pete Rose could have actually been in the movie Airplane. And this one was just in a local Cincinnati newspaper the other day. And the way the story goes, back in 1980, of course, the movie Airplane was shot, and two sports legends were given close consideration in appearing in this movie. One of them eventually did, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Cincinnati Reds legend Pete Rose as well actually could have been in that movie. Rose probably would have been hilarious. Of course, at that time, he was with the Phillies, and the movie was actually being shot in August around that time in 1979. So that's the reason why the producers shot and two sports legends were. So very interesting how Pete Rose could have been a legend, just like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with that hilarious appearance that he made in there. But an interesting story this week in Cincinnati area newspapers that made the papers yesterday. And, of course, Pete Rose applying back to get back into baseball. Gary's been the biggest part of the news so far. But an investigator, this one also from a local Cincinnati newspaper, said, do not let him back in ever. So, wow. Yeah, it's he actually really shed a lot more light on the story from the original charge going way back when. In fact, he was the former special counsel to the commissioner of baseball back then. His name is John Dowd. And he really spelled out exactly what Pete Rose did. A lot of the stories now circulating are saying that he just bet on his Reds to win, and that apparently was not true. This investigator tells the papers that he had bets on a lot of teams every night, about 10 games a night, sometimes at $2,000 a game, Gary.
Well, again, I as long as he didn't bet against his team, which it didn't appear that he did. So I don't really see where the problem. Well, I guess we're looking at it. We went through this last week with the whole DraftKings and all of that, and isn't that gambling as well? But it's very strange, and but it's interesting to see Pete back in baseball, so to speak.
Yeah. Just to finish up on John Dowd's statements, yeah, he had a pattern as well. He didn't bet on the Reds when pitchers Bill Gullickson or Mario Soto were starting. So a little more than meets the eye to that Pete Rose story. Of course, you could use the same analogy that he had an illness, uh, sort of like a drug addiction to gambling, if you will. And that's what it probably was. He had loan sharks owed $200,000 to $300,000 when the story broke. Uh, he was owing back taxes. So yeah, Pete Rose a little bit more than met the eye with that whole situation. It wasn't just a few games here and there. It was a full scale, probably a mess for him. But
Well, they said he was a big time gambler. He used to love the horses and everything else. So it is an addiction. And then, as you say, with all this stuff going on now with Josh Hamilton and all that kind of thing, you gotta wonder if you're gonna let somebody like Josh Hamilton in, or remember Steve Howe and all the problems he had and the chances he had. Why not Pete Rose? And again, we went through this last week about how the commissioner feels that gambling is so much more worse than anything else. But I don't get it. I don't. To me, it's not as bad as some of these other things that have gone on. So, but it's a different world. But him going on Fox is going to be an interesting situation.
yes, indeed. Pete Rose back in baseball. He's going to be a studio analyst with Fox while he awaits his ruling on reinstatement into baseball. Of course, he agreed to that lifetime ban 26 years ago. He will not be in stadium broadcast booths. He will be at the studio for Fox, covering various games and pregame and postgame. Although they did not release when he will be starting on the air, I'm sure they'll make a big ballyhoo about it when he finally gets a schedule. So, 74 years of age now, Charlie Hustle, about to take on a new career, broadcasting some baseball sports.
Well, good for him, and it's about time that they let him do something. And he's got a lot of knowledge, and it should be very interesting to hear what he has to say.
Yes, that is true. And your first story up this week got an interesting story as well.
Well, Rich, as a New York Mets fan, I have no love lost for the St. Louis Cardinals. But apparently, they're getting a little obnoxious with themselves that they believe in revisionist history. And you remember when the Houston Astros wasn't too long ago, used to be in the National League, and they had a strong rivalry with the St. Louis Cardinals. But apparently, the Cardinals seems to have left the Astros behind now that they're in the American League, at least judging by the scorecard that they unveiled at the home opener. And if you're watching the video, you can see it there. You'll notice the Astros, who won the NL Central from 1997 to 1999 and again in 2001, are missing from the others that won the division titles. And it's worth noting that the Cardinals flag also claims the 2001 title, which was a bone of contention between Houston and St. Louis. In case you forgot, Rich, both teams finished with the identical record, and the Astros won the season series 9-7, and they were given the division championship. The following season, the Cardinals displayed a banner on the outfield wall. It said 2001 Central Division co-champions, and as far as it goes, there is no such thing as a co-champion. They lost the series, the season series, and they were given the wild card that year. So where did they get off pouncing around there? Fred Bird pouncing around on a scorecard with a flag that says 2001 champions when it was actually the Houston Astros. Now, like it or not, they were the champions. Now, MLB, here we go again, putting their I guess they're foot in their mouth again because they say, yes, the Astros, in that sense, were the champions. And the Cardinals, well, you could technically say they're both champions, but it's a placement in postseason. They're sort of co-winners. I I don't know, Rich. To me, there's no such thing as a co-winner. It ended in a tie. The tiebreaker declared a champion, and that was the Houston Astros. But here's the St. Louis Cardinals horning in again and taking something that isn't theirs. Yeah. Just my opinion.
Very interesting. I didn't see that story this week, but yeah, you would think that they would be happy with all the positives they did without claiming that right to the championship that year. But that's how sometimes history gets rewritten.
And, a lot of people consider them, they think, and I don't know how true it is, but you see more and more that they're getting as arrogant as the Yankees now, the Cardinals. And they have a great organization. They do win a lot. But, come on. I mean, this is, the Astros have, I don't want to say so little to hang on to because they did have some good teams there. But let them enjoy what they earned, and they earned it completely. I mean, they did win the season series, and that was the tiebreaker and so forth. So you didn't win it in 2001. I'm sorry, and I know it's a simple little thing, but it just, as I said, I'm not a Cardinals fan. It just kind of galled me when I read this article.
Yeah, well, now that you mention it, let's go around the National League a little bit. As we were talking about a little bit before the show, no team hotter than your New York Mets. They won their 8th straight game today.
Yeah, and it came with consequences, though, Rich. It was great to win our 8th straight, but it hurt at the same time. We lost our starting catcher who was red hot, hitting .315. Travis d'Arnaud got hit with a pitch and fractured his right hand. And one of our relief pitchers, Jerry Blevins, who's been doing a terrific job, a lefty relief pitcher, but he has been just fantastic. He's been perfect. Faced 15 hitters so far in this young season and put 15 down. He got hit with a ball back to the shot back to the mound and fractured his left arm. So he had 2 fractures in one game today for the Mets, and that's going to hurt. But they've called up 2 minor leaguers, and I think for the first time in a long time, the Mets are in a position to be able to replace people without, I wouldn't say concern, of course, because you don't want to lose anybody. But they're in a better position, I think. And this year we've lost a lot so far. Zach Wheeler, Josh Edgin, the lefty relief pitcher. Now Jerry Blevins, David Wright is out, and Travis d'Arnaud. So a lot lost, but 8 in a row and 10-3 on the young season. So it's going good for us right now.
Yeah, all I see on Twitter from the official New York Mets feed is get to the ballpark early. We're going to be packed tonight.
Yeah, it's been great. They've been drawing pretty well, and let's hope it continues.
Yes, indeed. The Atlanta Braves holding down second place. They're in the National League East, 8-4. Game and a half behind the Mets, and the Washington Nationals, which took a couple of games from the Phillies in the last series, are creeping up in the standings, 6-7 on the season. Jumping over to the Central League, it's the St. Louis Cardinals, still on cruise control, a little bit out there in the Central, winning 4 straight, 7-3 in their last 10. And of course, that was their first 10 because they're still 7-3. They're actually the game of the night tonight against Cincinnati on Sunday Night Baseball tonight.
Yeah, that should be a good Central Division rivalry there.
Yep. And now that we're talking a little bit about the Central, talk a little bit about the Cubs here. Cubs moving up the standings. They're in second place, 6-5, a game and a half back. And you have a story if you want to take this one now, Gary, on a big acquisition finally on the field for the Cubs.
Well, we talked about it before. Kris Bryant, who was the big star at spring training camp, and of course he went down for money reasons or whatever, and they finally called him up. He didn't hit a home run in every at bat. In fact, he went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts in his first game, and they actually had one guy booing him already. But he admitted he was anxious, and Joe Madden kidded that they brought him up for his glove, and he did get some of the jitters out of the way early when he started a double play in the first, and he ended the fifth with snaring a Derek Norris line drive with an acrobatic catch. And then his best play probably came in the seventh when Bryant grabbed Will Middlebrook's chopper just behind the bag near the line and threw in time to get him out to open the frame. Now, in the second game, he did manage to get his first major league hit and his first major league RBI. So the Kris Bryant era has started in Chicago.
Yes, it has. And he's about 6 months younger than Mike Trout. Of course, Mike Trout making the news in the past week as the youngest player to hit 100 home runs, and another milestone, which I don't recall right at this time, but Kris Bryant still has a chance to pass him. So a couple of new big stars coming up the ranks at the same time here.
Yeah, we see some youth coming into the game, and it's good. It always needs an influx of youth to continue everything with the game, but these guys look like they're going to be battling, and you throw in Giancarlo Stanton there, and some of the young pitchers around, Matt Harvey, of course, and Jacob deGrom from the Mets, and some of these other guys, Jose Fernandez when he gets back, and we could be looking at a very exciting era in baseball.
Yes, we could. The new superstars are taking over for the older ones. Further on down in the Central, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates expected to do well this year. 6-6. They got a 500 record, winners of 3 in a row. And out on the West Coast, the LA Dodgers, 9-3, 8-2 in their last 10. And a big number here, 8-1 at home, Gary.
Wow. That is a big record. That's nice. But the Mets are 8-0 at home, so. Sorry, folks. I had to get that in there.
Not bad.
7-0. I'm sorry, 7-0.
You've got to expect some crow when you're doing that well.
That's right.
San Diego Padres, who bolstered their team, letting that show in the standings as well. 8-5. They're 7-3 in their last 10, moving up the ranks as well. So the San Francisco Giants, by the way, Gary, received their championship rings over the last, I think it was yesterday afternoon. They are in last place so far, 4-10 there in the NL West.
Wow, and I think they had an 8-game losing streak or something, so they're not doing well this year, but it's, as we've said, it's not an even year, so nobody's really picking them.
Yeah, 1-9 in their last 10, but they had their gold jerseys on for this game. The Giants were emblazoned across their jersey in gold with the gold SF on the hat instead of the usual orange. So very cool to see some of those championship rings as well. I don't know if you had a chance to, Gary, but they're really nice.
I haven't seen them, but they're usually pretty big and gaudy.
Yeah, that about fits the bill with these, very much so.
And they're not really. I mean, years and years ago, of course, they used to be more like a ring. Now they're so big, I don't even think you can wear them half the time.
Yeah, they're actually they look like about, I don't know, an inch and a half across. They have the big SF on the top, and now that I think about it, I'll put a photo of the ring right on our website at MLBThisWeek.com, where you can find all of our shows, the video version of the show, as well as links to the audio only version, which you can find on iTunes and also Stitcher Radio. So stop on over to MLBThisWeek.com and check out all that we have to offer there.
And Rich, have you seen what's going on in the American League this year? It's really something else. Baltimore is taking over the East with the Red Sox at 7-5 each. The Yankees have crawled to a 500 record so far. That's in the East.
Yeah, Baltimore winning a couple of games there in Boston this weekend and dethroning the Red Sox out of first.
And in Central, of course, it's Detroit, but right on their heels is the Kansas City Royals. And in third place is the Minnesota Twins with an under 500 record, but still hanging in at third place. And that's pretty interesting. They've got a new manager and some new players there, so we'll see how they fare over the course of the season. And out west, Rich, it's the Houston Astros in first place with a 6-6 record. Oakland is next at 6-7, and the Angels are 5-7. So not a very good division, and that's surprising because that was a division that's got a lot of good, solid teams in it.
Yeah, that's for sure. The Astros have been trolling the bottom for so long. You have to figure 1 year they're going to start to move up in the ranks, and maybe this will be the year.
Yeah, it certainly looks like they've got a lot of good young players there. A couple of them from the Phillies, I think, and really putting together something maybe special in the next couple of years.
Yep, we'll keep our eye on the Houston Astros. And Gary, now that you mention it, the next story up tonight is about an old Dodger spring training area, the Dodger Town, as they used to call it, for years a staple down in Vero Beach, Florida, before the Dodgers moved out of there and went out to Arizona, is getting a new use. And it's from an old owner of the Dodgers, the O'Malley family, actually revitalizing the Dodger Town area, inviting some Canadian football leagues down there to train. They have high school soccer games and junior college softball championships down there as well. So they're keeping the place up and keeping the dream alive down there in historic Dodger Town down in Vero Beach. Of course, the Dodgers rather left in 2008 and went out to Arizona. After that, Dodger Town sort of fell into a state of disrepair, and in fact, it was very close to being abandoned and overtaken by weeds, as a matter of fact, for several years. So a lot of good things happening down there in Vero Beach with these old training facilities.
And what a shame, too, because they always used to say that was one of the best facilities in Florida. They had everything there, state of the art and nice, and to let it go. But it's nice to see that they're trying to do something with it and revitalize it.
Yeah. The old owner of the Dodgers, Mr. O'Malley, and the O'Malley family had said that it would never, Dodger spring training would never leave Dodger Town. Of course, when they sold their majority stake over, that was it. They were instantly gone out of Vero Beach and out to the Arizona desert. So, yeah, very good to see a a baseball field staying intact down there, even though they're using it for other things, softball, football, rugby, even lacrosse, and some other international baseball teams even training there. So it's still a tourist attraction down there in Florida.
And at least it's getting used, so that's the main thing.
Yes, indeed. Well, you have one of my favorite topics and story topics of the night here. One of the greatest baseball players that is honored every year by MLB Baseball, ending up in space.
Well, sort of, Rich. We're talking about the Dodgers, and this past week, speaking of one of the best Dodgers of all times, Jackie Robinson, it was Jackie Robinson, the most confusing day in baseball, I guess, because everybody wears number 42. They celebrated that this week. And but this year on Jackie Robinson Day, his influence has officially slipped the stratosphere. And as you can see, this is astronaut Terry Virts, currently the commander of Expedition 43 aboard the International Space Station, wore a replica. Oh boy, I'm having trouble with the English language tonight. Wore a replica Robinson jersey and Brooklyn Dodgers cap in honor of Jackie. He's an avid fan. Virts is of the Baltimore Orioles and a game of baseball. And for the past few days, he's been tweeting out pictures taken from space of the 28 cities with major league teams, challenging his followers to correctly match each city with the photo and the hashtag ISS play ball. And so on Jackie Robinson Day, he had a Dodgers jersey and a Brooklyn Dodgers cap, which he donned and broadcast from outer space to honor Jackie Robinson.
Very cool. So that's another reason to tune into that NASA feed that they have occasionally. You can find it on the internet just by Googling it. And a very cool way to honor a baseball player of any sort, especially Jackie Robinson there, as you had it up on the screen there on our video version of the show, Gary, in a nice 42 Dodgers uniform.
Yes, really pretty sharp. And let's pop that up again there. And you can see he's in outer space because that ball is just kind of floating there. So, pretty neat when they can do things like this. And I always say we live in an incredible age. I'm often not amazed because what we do here, that people all over the world can see this and can hear this, and but it's just amazing how you can be in one country all the way across the other side of the world and be broadcasting to somebody on this side of the world. Just an incredible thing. And here he is in outer space broadcasting back to us.
That is very cool, especially as you say, even our podcast now, just a few short years ago, this kind of thing, I don't know, would have cost a lot of money to do. So as you said, the technology is amazing. We want to encourage all of our international listeners, please send us an email over to talk@mlbthisweek.com. Tell us your story, why you're interested in baseball, why you like to tune into the show. I know we have a number of listeners that tune in from England and over in Europe. So drop us a line, say hello. We'll give you a mention on the show even.
And, England's a big hot place for baseball, it seems, lately. So drop us a line, and don't forget to listen to baseballtalkradio.com, because there's all kinds of great baseball podcasts on that network, and Rich has just added about 3 or 4 more great shows. One I'm really looking forward to, that Baseball As It Was show. And we have the Dodgers show now on there, and of course Rich's show, Phillies Talk, and my show, Mets Musings, is on there. And there's a Baltimore Orioles Bird's Eye View which you can hear me on. I believe it's May 5th. I think it's going to be Bird's Eye View. And just so many more. Japanese, baseball. Rich, anything else?
Just added this weekend a Tokyo baseball team there. Tokyo Swallows baseball. Their season starts up soon, so head on over to baseballtalkradio.com. A number of different minor leagues broadcasts as well there. The Twins, the White Sox, just a whole lot of shows. Even our own show here, MLB This Week, the Cubs, the Royals, Giants. Tune in. A lot of great baseball talk there around the clock for you. And we hope you give it a listen.
And Rich, you got a story about Josh Hamilton, and this guy is just he's having a nightmare of a year in 2015.
Yeah, he seems to break down to the bottom, rebuild himself, and come up smelling like a rose. And apparently he's trying to do it again. But more of the Josh Hamilton story coming out this week. Of course, he's not with the Angels yet, trying to rebuild his ties there slowly but surely. Still not sure how that's going to work out, but Hamilton has put his house up for sale, one of his mansions there in California. A lot more released about the possible reasons why he relapsed into his addictions there, going through a divorce, apparently. It was announced, but put his $16.5 million home in Newport Coast, California, up for sale. He has other houses in Texas. Of course, he played with the Rangers for a number of years. And Gary, he seems bulletproof. Even the Players Association coming to bat for him, even though he did these illegal drugs, apparently, and the average Joe would probably be in a lot more trouble than he is.
Well, I think a lot of people have compassion for his problem, but you know, he's a troubled guy, and he's got it bad, and I don't know how many more times. It's hard to say. We don't have that problem, but it's really a shame.
Yes, it is. Not much more you can say. It almost reminds me of a Dwight Gooden from the 80s Mets. Always seemed like he was getting in trouble, slipping back into his personal addictions and things. And you can just hope that he makes it through, even if he doesn't come back to baseball. You hope that the demons inside of him doesn't eventually get him.
And now with this whole, the whole divorce thing, and it's just going to be really a mess for him.
Yep, so much more of the Josh Hamilton story coming out. We'll be watching it as it unfolds, see if he returns back to Major League Baseball. The Angels don't seem to want to have anything to do with him anymore. Of course, they still owe him a ton of money. That could be the reason.
Could be, and I think that they're probably doing the same thing the Yankees are trying to do with A-Rod, or tried to do, and tried to get rid of that contract, but I don't think it's going to happen. So,
no, we'll have to see what happens with it. And you have a story that I alluded to earlier about a player becoming the youngest to reach certain milestones.
Yeah, Mike Trout having his way into the record books Friday night, notching his 100th and 101st career home runs during the Angels' 6-3 win over the Astros. He established the milestone early on, depositing a 2-run shot off of Houston starter Roberto Hernandez in the 6th inning, followed 2 innings later by a 3-run game-tying homer against reliever Chad Qualls. At 23 years and 251 days old, Trout is currently the youngest player ever to achieve over 100 runs and 100 stolen bases, beating out Alex Rodriguez, who eclipsed both records at the age of 23 years and 309 days by nearly 2 months. The speedy outfielder has 104 steals to his name after nabbing his 100th base toward the end of last season. So Mike Trout, well on his way, it looks like, to a possible Hall of Fame career there, Rich. And really, he is, as we said before, one of the top players in the game today.
Yeah, and it's amazing how the scouts of Los Angeles picked up on him. Of course, as I've stated before on many of these shows, he grew up in South Jersey, was a standout high school player, but the Angels system went and got him. So kudos to them, and Trout making the most of his career, getting paid to play a baseball game must be about the best career you could have, but doing as well as he has got to be just icing on top of the cake for him.
And Rich, do you happen to remember when he was drafted? Was he drafted high or was he lower down? Do you recall it all?
I recall seeing some draft news about him in the local Atlantic City paper, which is still being updated on a daily basis. They had said that that the Angels picked him up. I'm looking at his baseball reference page now. Let's see what it says here. He's drafted by the Angels of Anaheim in the 1st round. It was the 25th pick of the 2009 amateur draft. So he didn't even make it into college. The Angels just went and got him. He signed the contract. A lot of kids might have wanted to go to college for a few years, but Trout making the best move there, signing a baseball contract, and when he got on the field, he's making it happen.
I'll tell you, it's almost hard to believe that 24 guys were picked ahead of him, but that's the way it goes sometimes. You never know.
Yeah, and again, kudos to the Angels. They have the scouting system, even though he was right in the backyard of the Philadelphia Phillies, 40 miles away from them, from the stadium, didn't make their radar. So a lot of great players yet to be discovered in the game. I'm always under the impression players like Trout exist out there. Sometimes they don't get the chance to prove themselves.
That's for sure. And I'm just looking at some of the the people that were picked ahead of him, and some decent players. I mean, Steven Strasburg was the number 1 pick that year. Not a bad pick.
Yeah.
Who else is on there? Zach Wheeler was on that in that draft. He went 6th to the San Francisco Giants. Mike Minor was number 7 to the Braves. Drew Storen went to the Nationals at number 10. Any other names? Yeah, Shelby Miller went to the Cardinals at 19. But by far, I mean, Strasburg, Wheeler, good names, but I think Trout's having the biggest of all of those, having the best career so far.
Yeah, drafted right out of high school as a young player, spent a couple years honing his game in the minors, but that's all it takes sometimes. A number of the top 10 picks that year were all out of college, so a lot of these players make a decision, go right into the pros, and he was one of them. He's one of those all-time great baseball stories in the making here.
Certainly was. Certainly is, I should say.
Yep, even from the early days. So great news there for Mike Trout. I know Ryan Howard was kind of younger. I think his claim to fame was he was the fastest player to hit 100 home runs in his early career, not necessarily the youngest, because the Phillies kept him under wraps for a while before they finally brought him up. But I still think he owns that record as being the fastest player to hit 100 home runs. And then, of course, in the last couple of years, he's died down. So a couple of the great names of baseball there. And speaking of more great baseball talk here, Gary, a lot of buzz around Nashville that they could be possibly getting a Major League Baseball franchise in the future. This story from the Tennessean newspaper talking about the National Football League there, the Tennessee Titans, and of course the Nashville Predators from the Hockey League, NHL, exist there, and they do quite well, selling out most of their games. Is the Titans. In fact, they sell out every home game. The Predators, just about the same, maybe 75% of their games sold out. And in the future, I think they're going to be looking for an MLB franchise over there in Music Town. The one hurdle they'll have to come up with, Gary, is the cost of a ballpark, and that generally exceeds around $600 million as of today. So they're going to have to find a reason and some money to build that ballpark.
Yeah, well, I wonder if they have. I know for years they had the Nashville Sounds, I believe, which was a minor league ballpark, and don't know if they could expand it and play some of their games until they could build a ballpark there. But it's fascinating, and we've spoke before about how baseball should expand, and my guess was they should expand. I would expand by 2 teams and get rid of that damn DH and get rid of interleague play. But hey, that's just me.
Yeah,
but that's what I'd like to see, and expand the rosters a little bit too. Add a couple more players. I think it's time. I think the game has changed enough where specialty play comes into being. And I think you need a couple of more guys on the roster.
Yeah, in that area of the New South, so to speak, just north of Atlanta, is a booming area. They have a lot of businesses being built there, automobiles manufactured there. They have a lot of people down in that area now. So definitely one of the fastest growing areas in the country. Right around Tennessee area there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the near future with that.
Yeah, it would be. And, people talk about Vegas, but I doubt if they'll ever build anything in Vegas, a professional, because they're too worried about the gambling aspect of it all. But Nashville would be good. Look at the job that Oklahoma City does with the Thunder down there, the NBA franchise. They do an awesome job. And Carolina might be another spot to look, though. A lot of retirees and stuff down there. So it's going to be interesting in the next few years as the shift in America, if you will, occurs almost southward. And we'll see if they grant more teams down there. Of course, Miami does struggle a little bit. They got that huge stadium, but they do struggle a little bit getting a large crowds. But we'll see. I think Nashville, as you said, they have the Predators and the other team that you mentioned.
The Titans, Tennessee Titans.
Right. And they do very well. So it'll be very interesting to see if they can get a major league franchise somewhere down the line.
Yes, it will. And big talk around New York this week. A-Rod closing in on a milestone here, but is it much to do about nothing up there in New York?
Well, A-Rod is sitting a couple away or one or two by now from Willie Mays' 660 home run mark, and he's going to get $6 million from the Yankees for passing that milestone. There's nothing he can do about that. But they've practically come out and said that there's going to be no fanfare, no holograph balls, nothing along that line, unless they change their mind at the last minute. But as of now, there's nothing at all to really make this a celebratory event. I think, frankly, the Yankees want as little to do with it as possible. Look, the reason they signed him because they saw dollar signs if he could do this, and then once that PED suspension came, they almost wanted to play Pontius Pilate and wash their hands of the whole A-Rod thing. So, and I just have to put this picture up. I know it's not nice, but this is a picture that was making the rounds on the internet the other day. And I couldn't help but want to include this on today's show. If you're watching the video, there's A-Rod with a big hypodermic needle instead of a baseball bat. So, reminiscent of when Roger Clemens was around there and the stuff they used to put out on the internet with him. But I just thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, but the Yankees, they're just kind of like ho-humming it and just saying, okie dokie. I think if they didn't have to pay him the $6 million, they would avoid that. But I don't think they're going to get away with that. But the other route to take is not to consider it as anything big.
Yeah, it's amazing because the Yankees are certainly playing him more than I thought they would. He's appearing in most of the games, DHing for the Yankees, so they're trying to get their money's worth out of him at least.
Well, he's right now. They got to play him. He's their best hitter. I mean, he's been off to a good start. He's hitting the ball, and but I mean, they're going to play him as long as he can go, I guess, and maybe they're hoping that he breaks down somewhere along the line, and it's more of a permanent breakdown, and they won't have to pay him the rest of the contract. I don't know. I mean, we discussed this in the past, and I said I would have been breaking him. I would have had him playing every inning at third base and first base and wherever else you wanted to play him to make him prove that he could play. But so far he's been DHing and he's been hitting, so he'll be in that lineup.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about some of these superstars that have been linked with all the PEDs and all is they were very great players before they even thought about doing that kind of stuff. So kind of makes me feel like, they wanted to extend their careers as long as they could, repair themselves as fast as they could. But underneath all of that, they're still great baseball players. So it's a double-edged sword with them, really.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it is against the law, and he got caught. And the thing with Alex Rodriguez is he's just a slimy character. I mean, I happened to flip on the game the other night, and he was being interviewed, and even when he seems like he's sincere, you're thinking
he's not.
He's not. Yeah, he's just. I mean, he can't help the way he looks or anything, but he just looks like a slimy character.
Yeah, almost like you want to think, what is he up to now? What is?
Yeah. Or you're thinking, oh, here he goes again. He's giving that speech about how he loves the fans and blah blah blah. And it's it's almost like that Geico ad with the Pinocchio. You're expecting A-Rod's nose to get bigger every time he says something. But and I think that plays into this whole thing that he's just not a likable character. and yet he seems like a guy that I I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but he just seems like a lonely guy, and he wants to be Derek Jeter. I think he wants to be loved like that, but nobody likes him. And of course, the Yankee fans will love him if he hit. I mean, he could be standing with a knife over two bodies with the blood dripping from the knife, and the Yankee fans would say, "What? Well, I didn't see him." You know,
Yeah.
I mean, the way they go. But he's just, he's just not a likable figure, and I think that adds to it all. And then, the fact that he lied about the PEDs and everything. I mean, so did Ryan Braun, but Ryan Braun is more likable. He's just a more likable guy for whatever reason, and I don't know. And I think the Yankees is just kicking themselves. But look, they got greedy too. I mean, they saw that when they had a chance to re-sign him, and they knew he was going to, till age 45 or something, whatever his contract runs until. And they figured he was going to break these records, and they were going to really cash in on it. And now they don't. Now it's like if they cash in on it, they'll be such hypocrites after fighting him. And so I think they're just kind of sweeping it under the rug.
And stuck with him, so to speak.
And stuck with him, yeah. Yeah.
Well, our last little blip here, story of the night for you and this podcast. I ran upon this doing some research. The average ticket price by team in 2015, highest Boston Red Sox at $52.34 average per game ticket. Right underneath them, the Yankees $51.55 in price per game. Surprise on this one for me, the Chicago Cubs in third place, third highest average ticket price at $44.81. Then the Phillies at $37.42.
Wow.
Your average ticket prices. All the way down at the bottom, this one is an amazing stat. The San Diego Padres at an average ticket price of only $16.37.
That is amazing.
Almost, 15 years ago prices there for the Padres.
Wow.
But, a number of other teams. The MLB average is $28.94 average ticket price between the higher and the lowest ticket price there. So interesting stat there. The Mets at $25.30. So they're falling under the average, as are the Dodgers. So a few stats to think about here during the week.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. That's very interesting.
Yep. Well, we thank you for stopping by the MLB This Week show this week. Tune in next week. Go to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, or over at Stitcher Radio. You can take us on the go with you wherever Stitcher goes.
And Rich, you have a great week, and I guess that does it for this week's show, huh?
Yes, it does. Thanks a lot, Gary. You do the same. I'll talk to everyone on the next show of MLB This Week.